Hello, I'm Amundsson. In this video we're going to take a closer look at Gamla stan, or the old town. This is the original Stockholm, built where the Lake Mälaren meets the Baltic Sea. The city was growing here already back in the 12th century, and the city of Stockholm was officially founded in 1252 by the great statesman Birger Jarl. This is Stortorget, the Grand Square. In early November 1520, a massacre took place here at the direct order of the Danish King Christian II. He had just been crowned to King of Sweden as well, and called a lot of important people to a celebration at the royal palace. They should not have gone to it. About 100 people were killed, and this massacre earned him the name Christian the Tyrant in Sweden. This massacre also sparked the revolution that led to the liberation of Sweden. The leader of that revolution, Gustav Vasa, became the first king of the newly independent Sweden. For more than 100 years, his descendants, the Vasa dynasty, ruled Sweden. Today, as you can see, Stortorget is a peaceful place where people come to eat, drink, and relax. The building to the left is the Nobel Prize Museum, a small museum dedicated to the great Swedish inventor, industrialist and philanthropist Alfred Nobel and the Nobel Prize. For example, the museum recently had an exhibition about Martin Luther King, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. In the old town you will find crowded shopping streets like this one, Västerlånggatan, as well as tranquil alleys where time seems to have stood still. It has been said that in the old times, the people who lived here used to empty their potties through the windows. If that is true, people who walked in these alleys back then had to look up often. The royal palace in the old town was built in the early 18th century, and it is one of the biggest and oldest of its kind in Europe. It is the official residence of His Majesty the King of Sweden, but the king doesn't actually live here. He lives at the Drottningholm Palace, which is outside the city. The royal palace is used mainly for official receptions, and it's open to the public around the year. Visitors to the royal palace can take a guided tour, walk around by themselves, or do both.
Самое ценное здесь картина – это портрет мальчика в Тичине и мадонна с младенцем работы декоративной картины 15 века. Они приехали сюда вместе с принцессой, вот этот вот ранний картин. Игровой вход – официальная часть встречи между королем и назначенным послом. А потом они переходят в эту комнату, входят в современном стиле. Эта комната преобладает нынешнему королю.
Yeah.
Шведские солнечные
This is the courtyard. There is a nice little restaurant here, and in the summer you can have lunch or coffee outdoors. The Royal Palace also has a shop where you can buy exclusive gifts and souvenirs. The traditional change of guards at the Royal Palace takes place every day around the year. From April to September it is with horses on Sundays, which makes it more spectacular and impressive. The Royal Guards were created in 1523 by King Gustav Vasa to protect and defend the king and the palace and help maintain law and order in the city. They could also serve as a fire corps if necessary. The change of guards today may seem mostly as a kind of show, but these soldiers have a very real and important task. The Royal Palace is also where you find Livrustkammaren, the Royal Armory Museum, which is in the basement of the palace. It was originally a storage room for uniforms and weapons created in the 16th century. It became a museum and was opened to the public in August 1885. It is one of Stockholm's oldest museums, and it has beautiful exhibitions of old uniforms and old weapons and old wagons like these. Next to the royal palace lies Storkyrkan, or the Grand Church of Stockholm, built in the late 13th century and then reconstructed in the 14th century. This is what it looks like on the inside. In this church you will find Saint George and the Dragon. This famous sculpture shows Saint George slaying the dragon and represents Sweden's victory over Denmark at the Battle of Brunkeberg in 1471. Storkyrkan is open to visitors around the year. Next to the old town lies Riddarholmen, a small island with old buildings only, which is more or less a part of the old town. This is Riddarholmskyrkan, an old church built in the late 13th century and one of Stockholm's oldest buildings. The great King Gustav Adolf, sometimes called the Lion of the North, was killed in the Battle of Lützen in Germany in 1632. 2 years later, in 1634, he was buried in this church. Since then, most Swedish kings, but not all of them, have been buried here. Riddarholmskyrkan is open to visitors in the summer. Tyska kyrkan, the German church, is another old church in the old town. It was built in the 15th century and is a reminder that Stockholm once had a large colony of German residents. Sermons and services are still in the German language. The tower of the German church is 150 meters high, and this makes the church the tallest building in the old town. Next to the old town lies this small island, Helgeandsholmen. The name translates to the Island of the Holy Ghost. Here you will find Sveriges riksdag, the House of Parliament, the big building in the background. Here you will also find the Museum of the Medieval Times, a museum about the older history of Stockholm. This island is not a part of the old town, but as it lies as close as you can get, and this is where you find the Museum of the Medieval Times, I decided to include it in this video. Here are some pictures from the Museum of the Medieval Times. This is Birger Jarl, the great statesman who founded the city of Stockholm in 1252. So this is what the man is supposed to have looked like. The summer is definitely the best time to visit Stockholm, but the old town is nice in the winter too, as these pictures will tell. Take a walk through the old town in the evening and feel the atmosphere. Then find a nice restaurant or a cozy bar where you can finish the evening. There are many nice restaurants and bars in the old town. That's all for this time. If you like this video, please share it and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.